Greetings from Columbia Business School Executive Education. I'm Dennis Kapush, Senior Associate Director, Digital Marketing, and I'm here today with Bruce Craven and Jeffrey Golde for today's webinar, How Leaders Intentionally Shape the Signals That Matter. Before I introduce Bruce and Jeff, I'd like to go over a few quick logistics. First of all, a recording of this webinar will be sent to you via email later today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them using the Q&A box in Zoom. We'll get to as many questions as possible in the last 10 minutes. And finally, follow us on LinkedIn for the latest business news and updates by searching for Columbia Business School Executive Education. Everyone, please welcome Bruce Craven. Bruce teaches across the portfolio for executive education, including serving as a faculty director and running leadership development programs. His teaching focuses on resilience, emotional intelligence, leadership communications, and flexible thinking. Craven has taught leadership to global audiences of business executives for 20 years. He is an author of Win or Die, Leadership Secrets from the Game of Thrones, Sweet Ride, and Buena Suerte in Red Glitter. He received his MFA in poetry from Columbia School of the Arts and has 2 BA degrees in politics and English from the University of California at Santa Cruz. Welcome, Bruce. It's our pleasure to have you. Next, let's welcome Jeffrey Golde. Jeffrey teaches communications at Columbia Business School and has trained hundreds of senior executives in leadership, communications, and strategy skills. He is a co-founder and principal of the Deep Breath Strategic Advisors, where he leverages a wide range of frameworks and methods to help individuals and organizations make impactful shifts. He's had a career in theater industry, which includes co-founding several theater companies. His background in performance and improvisation have significantly influenced his methods in leadership training and communication coaching. Jeffrey earned his BA from Hayford College and completed his theater training at Drama Studio London. He holds an executive MBA from Columbia University. It's our pleasure to have you, Jeffrey. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Dennis.
And now I'm going to leave it to you, and I'll come back in less than 10 minutes to help with the Q&A.
Thank you, Dennis. Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to folks who I gather are joining us from around the world. It looks like there's a lot of you on the call today, under 140 and counting. So today's only brief 20-30 minutes with you all is about how leaders shape the signals that matter and how important that is for being a good leader and achieving what we're trying to with our organizations. So let me start with a question for everyone that we'll reflect on throughout our 20 minutes together. So as you take a look at this list of activities, of things here, which of these do you think are not a communication? That is what we'll look at the end of the webinar. Which of these is not a communication? You can either write that down for yourself or put it in chat. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds right now to see what comes out in chat. Take your best guess about which of these is not a communication. We'll come reference this at the end. So this is called how we shape the signals that matter. So first, let's define what a signal is. A signal is a transmission of information. Already we know this is critical in organizations, right? Or instructions by means of a gesture, action, or sound. Okay, and I think we tend to think of communication just as that only part of the signals we send, but it's also your decisions and your actions, your decisions and your actions and your words. So citing another Columbia graduate, Warren Buffett, you can have all the brain power in the world, but you have to be able to transmit it. You can have the best ideas up here. And that transmission is communication. And that really is the challenge we're faced with. How do we get what's up here out there so people can take action?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to provide all of you with a quote that I use in all my teaching. I've taught senior executives for years. I run a course called Leadership Through Fiction. I mean, this quote really resonates with leaders of all ages. Think lightly of yourself and think deeply of the world. It's from Miyamoto Musashi, a famous samurai warrior in the 1600s. There's different ways, of course, to interpret this, but one of the reasons I like using it, and I think one of the reasons it really resonates, is that in leadership, we often have to get out of our own head. We have to get to a place where we're focused on other people. We have to think deeply of the world. And we're going to talk about that in different ways in our time here together. We're going to talk right now about this idea of choosing leadership. I remember a specific moment in my career. I was much, much younger. I was reporting up to people who were clearly in leadership positions, and I had opinions and thoughts about how to improve the efforts of our team. This was my early days in executive education. And I realized I needed to choose leadership. It wasn't particularly in my job description, but it was something that I realized I needed to do if I wanted to bring my best self to helping my team succeed. There's a famous book on leadership written by Warren Bennis. I had the opportunity of meeting him 30-something years ago at Columbia Business School. He taught for years at USC in Los Angeles. This book was really the first of kind of the latest wave of leadership books. It was published 35 years ago. And Bennis also became a leadership book publisher. So he's a very significant leader himself in the space of teaching leadership. When he talks about becoming a leader, one of the things he says that really resonated in me again some years back was that leaders invent themselves. So, I mean, we may be put into a leadership position through our boss, through our organization. On some level, we invent ourselves as leaders. We need to understand what we care about, what we're bringing to the organizational effort, of our work. Bennis talks about the importance of having a guiding vision. The leader has to be clear on what he or she wants to do, and they have to have the strength to confront adversity. Leaders have to have passion. Now, I'm putting these up here on the screen, and I want you to think about your own work. Think about times in the past or times in the future or times in the present when you've had a guiding vision. Think about how you can nurture that. Think about how you can nurture your passion for the work you do. Bennis also talks about integrity, and he breaks integrity down into 3 essential parts. So there's self-knowledge, understanding, kind of your raw material, your strengths, your weaknesses, what you're about as an individual. Candor, which means honesty. Okay, and that's not confessional, constant 100%, sharing of your internal opinions, but it's understanding what you need to do to convey and be principled and honest to your followers, your stakeholders, your colleagues, and even bosses in some cases. And then he talks about the importance of maturity, which we usually gain from having great mentors in our lives. I had an amazing mentor, a woman named Marianne Devana, in my earliest days at Columbia Business School, and it transformed my life and really caused me to choose leadership. Bennis talks about 4 key capabilities that we need to build in our leadership. Giving oneself over to a guiding vision, learning from the right mentors. You can see how this relates to what we were just talking about. Listening to the inner voice, so understanding what's important to you, your values, what you care about. And then this is the one we're really focusing on right now, is becoming self-expressive. So the importance of being able to step into a leadership moment and convey what matters to you in a way that builds the commitment of your followers. Another book that was published some years back was from a professor at Harvard Business School named Bill George. And it was really one of the first books in the space of authenticity. And this is a photo from a page of my book. When I first read the book 20 years ago, I was scribbling through it as I do when I read. And one of the things that really connected with me was this idea that in our lives from, say, birth to the age of 30, we're individuals. We're kind of understanding ourselves. We're, in George's words, rubbing up against the world, engaging with things. But from 30 to 60 is really the prime time where we move from I to we, where we step up to lead. I wrote a leadership book, as Dennis said so kindly in the introduction, about Game of Thrones. It's out there for those of you that find that kind of thing interesting. there's a segment in there where I refer to the work of a Columbia professor named Joel Brockner, who talks about a model called DVP is greater than C. So let's say right now you're trying to motivate your team, people on your team, to change. The cost of change is difficult. Getting people to actually step into change is a challenge. And the argument is that if you can build clarity on their dissatisfaction with the status quo, if you can provide them with a vision, and if you can give them a process on how they're going to achieve change, so if you can provide the DVP and connect it to a leadership message and connect it to effective communication, which Jeff is going to talk about more in a few minutes, you have the opportunity of really driving change. Jeff and I teach a lot together. We've done it over the years in many programs. We have a new program coming up in Dubai. And the leadership credo is a piece we're going to get into there, which is an opportunity to drive this DVP to make change happen. Jeff?
Yeah. So what Bruce is talking about with organizational change is so essential. It's the words you say, it's having this leadership credo so people know how to follow you through that change. And it's also in other signals you send. And those signals are communication, whether they be words or in actions or in decisions, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. Let's just look a little bit at some data here about the most critical skill a leader can have, right? When working with others, which is generally when you are leading, it has to be with others. And communication is number one. And that makes a lot of sense. So you see vision, which Bruce mentioned, is down there. And I'd say a bunch of these are the things that, as Warren Buffett said, you might have in your head: the vision, the EQ, the values you hold. But if you're not communicating them out, then people don't know what actions to take and where to go, how to execute on your strategy. So that's where communication becomes essential. And I want to say again, we're working towards, it's not just the words you say, it has to be aligned. But thinking about this whole idea of transmission of ideas, I think it's important to look at some principles of communication. So if you walk away with anything today, you can think about these principles and you can work through the implications of them, which I think are quite broad. The first one being, as humans, let's come back to the human level now. We are not cogs in a machine, nor are we machines. We are human beings. We are complex, which means we know more than we can tell. Our knowledge, our wisdom is embodied as well as something we can explain, but not all of it, right? So we know more than we can tell, and we usually can tell more than we can write. And the reason we have waves here is an example of sailors at sea. They can read the waves. They know what's coming. They know how to make some decisions. Now, if you ask them to write down a step-by-step method for you to read the waves, that'd be hard. You need to watch them and the waves for 4 or 5 years, maybe more, to understand that. So just for a moment, think about your organization. It's unique. It's a specific context. And all those people in your organization, they are reading the waves of the organization. They have a lot of knowledge they can't be explicit about. And we need to find ways to pass that on and make sure we cherish that. When someone leaves an organization, you're losing that knowledge. All right, so that's the first principle. And then there's 3 keys I want to talk about for communication. One is being present, about being connected with others, connected to your organizations, connected to the processes, to the things going on in between the lines. In a human interaction, that's like an exchange of energy probably between folks. And it means being focused on that so you really can take in what's happening and folks know you care about what's happening. That's just sort of an overview of presence, but what I mean when I say presence.
So let me just take you back quickly to that opening quote from the samurai Musashi: think lightly of ourselves and deeply of others. Leadership is very much about stepping into a moment where you need to be present, as Jeff talked about, and you need to motivate and build followership. There's a wonderful paper called Moments of Greatness, Entering a Fundamental State of Leadership. It's from the work of Robert E. Quinn, who is at, I think, the University of Michigan. He's written books in the same space. We're not going to go into all of that now, but there's one key question he talks about. when you step into a leadership moment, we all like to be in the comfort zone. We all like to be relaxed. We all like to be feeling 100% confident. But often when you step into a leadership moment, so when you try to be present, as Jeff talked about, when you try to think lightly of yourself, but deeply of others, you can ask yourself this question: am I results centered? Am I trying to get something done here? Am I trying to make something happen in the leadership space? And that question shifts you from kind of wanting to just stay in your comfort zone to realizing you're trying to motivate and drive people towards possibilities that don't exist. So that one question can help leverage your leadership skill and build on your presence to engage your followers.
Yeah, and I'd say, Bruce, that would also get you to expand your conception of signals you're sending to achieve that vision, to achieve that outcome. Not just your words, but what decisions are you making that are going to help others towards achieving that, and are those things aligned? So the second key here, and this is so important, this is maybe none of these are the most important, but this one is the one that is most not paid attention to by people I work with. It is not only what you say, it is what they understood. In other words, you know what was understood by the actions other people take. And this is critical. This is critical. You can be sure what you said was clear, but if someone took it differently in the global world we're living in, I see everyone here is from so many different countries, right? If they don't understand what you said or understood the meaning to be different, the actions they take may not be the ones you were expecting.
Thank you, Jeff. I remember I was in a class Jeff was teaching in our advanced management program about 5 years ago. And one of the exercises was, and I was participating in the class as well as running the program. One of the exercises was you told someone a story about an important moment in your life, and then they passed that story on to 5 other executives in the workshop. So as an American, there's a game you play as a young child called telephone, where you pass a message along and then you see what happens, right? So I told this story of being 19 years old, being in the US Virgin Islands, without work, traveling without money. I was opening coconuts for tourists. I was living on this beach hut that my friend and I built. And I thought I was conveying a story of resilience, of initiative, of courage, of adventurousness. But by the time the story came back to me, by the time 4 or 5 different people had interpreted it, in the story, I was told that I was non-committal. I didn't have a vision for my life. I was, in one person's description, I was a mess. And I was shocked to hear one of the fundamental stories of my life be reinterpreted by the way people heard it and then shared it to other people. And it really made me clear on this idea that we have to understand that our stories, our comments, our leadership messages have a life of their own, and we have to work to make sure the right message goes forward.
Yeah. And on that note, just everyone should think about not just your messages, but what would it make to make a decision that you thought was to do one thing and people misinterpreted that decision to be about something else. Think about how that might happen at your organization occasionally. Maybe share in chat if you can think of a good one. So to that end, there's a lot to go into in this sort of intent versus impact idea of this second key. I want to share the idea of the culture map with you, though, by Aaron Meyer, which draws on these 9 variables that different cultures fall on. And this is just a great tool for getting a handle of our global teams and how they might be interpreting or misunderstanding the signals we're sending based on the culture they come from, which is essential we take into account as we're trying to build alignment and get things done. So just, we could go deeper on this. I want to give you 2 examples. Just obviously, number 1, on communications. Some cultures being low context, some cultures having a more high context communication. And what's that mean? In low context cultures, communication is precise, it's simple, it's clear, and then messages are understood at face value. And there's a lot of repetition. You'll see some of those cultures have more diversity in the population, and that may be a reason. On the high context side, communication is more nuanced, it's layered, People read between the lines. Things are implied instead of more direct. Many times those cultures are older and there's more shared history and background there. So you can see immediately that might create some differences in how people interact. The other one you can think organizationally is we talk about trust all the time, right? We talk about trust. And so some cultures are task-based to building trust and some relationship-based. And by the way, this is, you got to look at the individual and organizational level here, but there is some truth as you look across countries. But task-based would be we work together, and by working together and doing good work, we build trust. On relationship-based, we meet at the water cooler, we meet at the coffee, have a coffee together, we have dinner together, and we build that personal relationship, and I trust you because there is that personal relationship. As a quick aside, my wife is Swedish. So many of you might be familiar with fika, which is a time 5 times a day where you have coffee and a little treat. And that happens at the workplace. That is a time to create that relationship-based working culture. You can see from the slide here about intent and impact. We'll take a couple examples you might be looking through, but on the left, something the British might say and how the British, what they mean by it and what the Dutch would understand by it. The two I really like here is, I'm sure it's my fault. That's 2 from the bottom, where the British mean it's definitely not my fault. And the Dutch say, oh, it was their fault. Great for them for taking responsibility for it. And then I like the 4 down. I was a bit disappointed that, and the British mean I was very upset and angry by that. And the Dutch say, oh, okay, doesn't really matter, just a bit disappointed. So you can see that's going to be critical in how people take their next steps, right? And whether there's action or inaction. Here is a few countries, the US, Italy, China, Germany, Mexico, the Czech Republic. And just what you should notice here is how any 2 countries on this map are pretty disparate, or if they're sort of aligning what the 1 or 2 variables that differ are. Where that differentiation is, that's where you got to pay attention for making sure what you say or the intent you had with what you mean is also felt by the other folks in the same way. So notice the differences. And then the question is, how are you going to adjust with your teams? And that brings us to the 3rd key, which is about listening. Listening is how you solve for these cultural differences. Listening is about how you solve for trying to understand another person so you can better interact with them and send signals they will understand. So the 3rd key is listen actively and empathetically. Sometimes when we talk to senior leaders, when Bruce and I have been on programs together, they actually cite this as the most important skill they somehow missed by the time they assumed to very senior positions. So we've really focused on this. It really is essential. I'll talk about that more in a minute.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I was brought up in a family where if I didn't express my opinion strongly and argue my case, I wasn't respected. And so I grew up very much that way, you know, sharing my opinion, engaging with people, many qualities that are very positive. In running and living in executive education programs with global executives from every functioning economy you can think of, at a certain point, I realized if I could enter, say, a dinner and just practice actively listening, thinking lightly of myself and thinking deeply of the world, I would surface from other people their interests, engagements, and concerns. And in a way, I would really actually help the conversation, the dialogue, and the learning at the table because I was stepping back from being a talker and practicing listening.
Yeah. So I just want to talk about this listening one more time and all these 3 keys and communication. As you become more senior in your leadership role, you're responsible for strategy and decision making. And that means you will have a lack of information. If you're in charge of 100, 500, 5,000 people, you cannot know everything. And that means one of your biggest resources is your people who are seeing everything from multiple perspectives. For you to make a decision, you would want to know what those multiple perspectives are. So you can make a good decision, so people can be aligned. And being able to gather those perspectives honestly, which is hard. People usually want to please you if you're senior. So you want to make sure they're giving you the right information so you can make a good decision and they trust you and you can build alignment. And the way you listen is a signal you send about how you will make decisions, about how you think of the employees. And by the way, that's not a verbal one. So if we come back to this slide, which of these are not a communication? I saw just a few, maybe I missed. I only saw a few entries. If you want to throw some more in, I saw someone offered that silence, and then someone offered that every word is a communication. Is there any other thoughts on this? Quickly in the chat, everything communicates. KPI is not great. We've got KPIs. Let me talk about KPIs. We got some all-in KPIs. Key performance indicators, I would argue, are a signal and thus a communication. When you set a key performance indicator, people will actually start behaving in a way to achieve that key performance indicator. You have signaled in a way, you have communicated, this is important, pay attention to this. So that's why KPIs are there. So if you were to make a town hall speech, and a really inspiring speech about collaboration, but your KPIs weren't aligned with that idea of collaboration, people would not probably listen to the words. They'd pay attention to that action, that decision, that processing in place. And that's the challenge of bringing your words, decisions, and actions and leadership and organization together. All of those things transmit information, right? Every process you set, the consulting firm you hire, that is a signal, and it's going to be interpreted in many ways. You're going to have to manage those signals. You're also going to want to think, are the signals I'm sending aligned? Not only should you be thinking about yourself, you can also be listening out. What are the signals coming at you? What do they mean? How may I have misinterpreted them? Bruce.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, we really appreciate you giving us your time and attention. We know we have people in the audience from all ranges here in age. Now, some of you may be looking forward and going, hey, okay, I'm rubbing up against the world. I'm 28. It's time for me to step into leadership. Some of you may be, late 50s, early 60s, realizing that it could be kind of peak leadership time for you, leading towards when you're going to offer wisdom and give back to the world. What we want to encourage you is to understand the signals, understand the importance of choosing leadership, be proactive about this, move from the I to the we, go out, impact the world, impact your organizations, impact your countries, and lead a fulfilled life. Anything you want to add, Jeff?
No, I think this is the challenge, and I see a lot of you picked out all of those things are communication, and that can be overwhelming. And Bruce said at the beginning, part of this is about choosing leadership. I just want to say it is a lot to manage all these signals, right? And you don't have to do it alone. You get a good team around you. You get people to help you. Leadership cannot be a solo activity anymore. But I just want to acknowledge this is a lot, and this is the challenge we find with a lot of leaders is how do I make sure my words and speeches are aligned with decisions I'm making? How can I start thinking about that interconnected web of signals we send? So I'd love to get to a few questions with the time we have left.
Thank you, Jeff. We're going to be running this program, Master in Executive Communication, in Dubai at the beginning of next year, and very likely at some point down the road, it's possible to run it in the United States. But we look forward to being in touch with you. Please reach out to us on LinkedIn. Hey, and we're going to have some Q&A now, but we're always going to be available for you. So if you want to reach out to us at another time, please do. Dennis?
Thank you, Bruce and Jeff. We had some great questions coming in, so let's get that started. And we'll try to answer as many of those as possible in the next 10 minutes or so. The first question we have is, some people start their communication messages or speeches with a joke. Is it an effective technique? What do you think?
I'll jump in first, Jeff. I've been in front of people in leadership roles for 3 decades. I can honestly say I have never delivered a joke, like a crafted joke, in front of people or even in a bar hanging out with people socially. I love people that can deliver jokes. I think it's an incredible skill. If you have that in your toolkit, do that. I do feel like I bring humor to my leadership communication, and it just comes in a more organic way without thinking of it or crafting a joke up front. So I think either method that gets you to bring humor into communication is going to help engage
Mhm.
your audience.
Yeah.
Jeff?
And I'll just reiterate what Bruce said. Let's just distinguish joke from humor. A joke is an artistic, crafted piece for a specific audience. Humor is observations about the moment, right? Something that might bring levity. You're not trying to necessarily get the room to crack up. And so I think that's just a different way of looking at it. And then the deep sort of communication signal, tactical communication approach is, what does this audience need at the opening? Is it a moment to start with a bit of levity? And that starts to get you thinking down these multiple signals. What has happened in the external environment, right? Is this where we need to start seriously? Do people need to just breathe for a moment? Because actually, if you laugh, that's a laugh is an exhale of breath. So maybe they need that laugh. So this gets into really deep audience analysis, which is part of how you approach it doesn't matter what you say, it's only what they understood, and that gap between intent and impact, that key number 2, is a much more tactical and deep analysis of the people in front of you.
Thank you, Jeff. And it leads me to the next question, which is how can you ensure that people hear your message and what are you trying to communicate? And so it's kind of like a twofold question.
Yeah.
And how do you how do you validate it? Do you have to ask your team to echo back what they heard and understood? How do you approach that?
Well, I saw in the chat, actually, someone said, maybe that was one of the questions in the chat. I
Yes.
think finding one thing is we don't check enough. A lot of times we say, was that clear? Of which the answer is yes. And the really question is, what did you take away from what I just said? Now, this is where, of course, tone and approach and culture matter. Like, if you say that, you don't want to come off as a kindergarten teacher, like, did everyone understand what I said? Right? You want to get into that culture of like, I'm asking you to repeat back to me your understanding, so we check that we're all aligned and together on this. That's one way. That was the only.
And I would build on
Yeah.
that, Jeff, too. I know one of my techniques is, which was very learned. It wasn't natural. In fact, it felt awkward for a while. I repeat back, like if I've landed a message, I've delivered a message, and I want to make sure I've
Mhm.
landed it. I will repeat back, is it clear that we're discussing today the importance of choosing leadership and the importance of taking on the responsibility of managing the signals you send in a leadership role? So I'll reiterate it, and they may interpret it differently, but then you're in a productive conversation, or they may understand the message as I intended it. I think
Yeah.
you've got to be proactive, which is what Jeff is saying.
You've got to be proactive, and it just goes back to, if you think of these things as principles, people are want to misunderstand. Like, it is part of having a global culture, a global world, and part of being human, because we interpret what we hear and we interpret signals, decisions based on our life experience. And so we have to build in that time to check. And we have to, like I said, we know what they understood, usually by the actions they took. And then we have to figure out how could we have clarified it if it's not the right actions. So check once, check twice, say it 3 different ways, say it and write it. And especially, this is a much bigger topic, but if you're changing a process like what constitutes bonuses, if you're changing KPIs, that actually takes a monitoring process. When you send that signal into the system, it's not sure, you can't be sure what's going to happen amongst 5,000 people. So you would want to actually set up some monitoring. Did things change in the way we expected or not? If not, the signal you sent may have not been the right signal.
Thank you, Jeff. I love the approach. The next question we have is more about how sometimes women perceived differently as leaders, comparing to male. So do you have any advice to women leaders who are trying to deliver their message? Is there anything specific they should pay attention to?
I think this is a rich and broad topic that's just, our 5-10 minutes is not long enough to fully dive into this. And the answer is yes, I have some thoughts on it, which is, deeply understand the context you're in and the organization you're in, and then figure out what is possible within that context. And this is really, again, to being very tactical about your communication with the people you're around. One answer is build allyship. So I'm working with a person in marketing who's a CMO, and she's surrounded by a lot of men and found that a difficult situation to deal with. So we have been very tactical about her building support from the board, building support from vertical business drivers who the work she's doing, they really appreciate. So she's got those allies in the room, along with her own analysis of the people in the room and what she needs to know. Now that's a portfolio you're building on those people of what they respond to from you, what they respond to in general, and then how you tactically approach that. And I'm sorry if that's more work, but that's the practical answer. And we could go into a whole systems change of what's right or not, but that's the kind of advice we would give.
I
Bruce.
think what I would add to that, Jeff, thank you, is, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, my first boss was a woman over 30 years ago who completely inspired me. Tragically, she died not that long after I left, maybe 25 years ago, of leukemia. She still inspires me. I've worked with probably thousands of senior leaders over my 30 plus years at Columbia Business School, and most of them have been male because that's kind of the gender bias that we've lived in. But I've seen things change. I've seen women be incredibly impactful as leaders, usually doing the same things that succeed with effective men, EQ, understanding themselves, authenticity, some of the stuff we talked about earlier with Warren Bennis. I would just add that in my leadership book, Win or Die, which is also available on Audible if you like that kind of thing, Chapter 5 is all about self-advocacy. So whether you're female or male, we all enter moments where we need to become our best advocate. So I might direct you to that. And again, Jeff and I will always be available to answer thoughts and engage with you on LinkedIn if that's helpful. Dennis, you got one more?
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, we almost ran out of the time, so we have time for the last question. And the question is, what are the common communication mistakes you see leaders make on a daily basis? Maybe think of like a low-hanging fruit, something our audience can take away and apply tomorrow in their communications and try to be present and pay attention to it and do something differently.
I mean, I think one thing to think about is the more senior you get, the more eyes are on you. And I really enjoy this. Another great Columbia professor, Adam Galinsky, wrote an article on your whisper is a shout. And as you become more senior, all the little things you do are signals. You walk in the room because you've had a bad day at home. People think there might be firings happening, budgets being cut. So having to be very self-aware of what you might be sending out when you walk into a room. And as you choose leadership, knowing that you are choosing to be under a microscope, that you are choosing to be in front of a camera lens. And I mean that both in a positive way and in a way to sort of empower you to know what is happening and then being able to make really thoughtful decisions about what you're going to do being put into that situation. The other part I would suggest is what I alluded to. Your content is not enough. Take that as a principle. You can have all the great content in the world. Who is the person in front of you? What are they looking for? What are their agendas? Really getting audience centered on it so you can be facile in the room, facile with people in front of you, whether you're senior or junior to those in front of you.
And I would just add to that, we had a woman in our advanced management program some years back who went on and had a very effective career in the UK government. And she gave a TEDx talk, and there's a great moment in it where she said, as a boss, you're a plot device. Like you're always, I'm reiterating what Jeff said, you're always on. And recognizing the reality of that and taking ownership of it is significant, which Jeff talked about. And then we had another executive, also from the UK, coincidentally, who went back to his job at a very demanding firm. And he said about 8 months later, I did a follow-up coaching session with him, and he said he was continually receiving positive feedback in the previous 8 months about his leadership. And he said really the most significant thing he did was he started focusing on listening. And he didn't enter meetings trying to win arguments. He didn't try to prove his cognitive horsepower, his intelligence. He actually focused on listening, and it just opened up his effectiveness in a way he never would have predicted. So that's my encouragement to myself on a day-to-day level, to graduate students or executives that I work with. And that's our encouragement to you, is to think lightly of yourself, think deeply of the world.
Thank you, Bruce. I learned a lot personally from you from you two today, and I'd like to thank you for your presentation today. And we look forward to your upcoming new program. We're very excited about it. It's called Mastering Executive Communication: Empower Your Leadership Voice. It's going to take place in person in Dubai from February 3 to 6, 2025. And please be on the lookout for more information about our programs in your email. And on behalf of Columbia Business School Executive Education, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, everyone.